take action. The moment I decided I'm actually going to do this and like, how can I be helpful? How can I show up? I started learning, I started joining things. I actually joined a mastermind, upskilling and getting better and learning what I needed to know. Then my life began to change. So in this episode, I want to talk to you about 4 simple things that will help you to make big, crazy, amazing things happen. Like, not only make them happen, make it inevitable that they will happen. So I want to tell you a story first before I share these 4 things. Last year, I was invited to speak at a Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi event. And so they flew me to Scottsdale, Arizona, and they put me up in an amazing hotel. And I went to the mastermind headquarters and I did a talk to over 13,000 people. And it was an incredible experience. I mean, being on a stage that Tony Robbins has something to do with was just bloody amazing. It was such an incredible experience, and it was definitely a bucket list thing. And over the past decade, there have been many bucket list things that I have checked off. And before that, say like maybe 13 or so, 14 or so years ago, things were different. I was not checking things off my bucket list. I was feeling incredibly stuck and frustrated and stuck in this cycle of, I don't know what to do, and feeling this heaviness that I just knew my life wasn't going the way I had wanted it to, and it was really driving me crazy. And so how do you shift from feeling frustrated and you're not where you want to be, and things aren't going the way you want, you're not as successful as you want, you're not making the money you want, you're not getting the opportunities that you want? How do you switch that and start to experience a life where the most amazing, mind-blowing things are happening? You are ticking things off your bucket list. You are doing incredible things like speaking on a stage that is Tony Robbins stage. Like, how do you do that? How do you make it happen? So I want to break this down, and I want to share with you some really ridiculously simple things, but these things change everything. And the one thing I always think we, as humans we do is we overcomplicate blooming everything. We overcomplicate how to be successful. We overcomplicate how to live our best lives. And we get stuck in these ruts of feeling like it's so out of reach for us, or just so hung up on, like frustration. So for example, me 10 plus years ago, when I was feeling stuck in this place of despair and frustration, I didn't know what I was doing. I knew I wasn't where I wanted to be at, but I didn't know how to get to where I wanted to be at. And everything felt out of reach, and it was frustrating. Like back then, I was focused on all the things that I didn't want. My mantra became, I don't know. I feel stuck. I'm frustrated. Every day, that was my mantra. I literally was hypnotizing myself all day long to feel crap, to feel these things, and I was hung up on them. And so guess what? I kept seeing more of in my life: more frustration, more feeling stuck, more despair. And this is the cycle that I see so many of us stuck in. And don't get me wrong, over the years, this happens, we're human. We get stuck on crap. But the point is, it doesn't need to be this way. And I think it's so important to realize this, that we actually have so much power over what is going on in our lives. But so often we give our power away. A lot of times we give our power away to our frustrations, to our doubts, to our worries, to that little niggling negative committee in our head. We hand over our power to that, and it basically keeps us prisoner in ourselves, and we don't actually we find it hard to break free from that and actually figure out this is actually another way. But really, creating success and living the life that you want can be so much more simple than we normally make it. And after interviewing so many really, really, really successful people, and having made this an absolute mission of mine to really think about and look at and research, I feel like there's only a handful of very simple things that you have to actually do to begin to completely move the needle and to totally transform your life and to to start experiencing amazing things. Let me tell you how I got on that stage, Tony Robbins stage. Let me tell you exactly how it happened. I was able to speak on Tony Robbins stage because I am part of a mastermind, and in that mastermind are two people that run a kind of an events company, and they run Tony Robbins events. And guess what? They were running the Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi event, and they were looking for a speaker. And so she put me on the radar for the event that I spoke at. They put me on the radar. And I ended up having the conversation. I ended up doing the event, and it was amazing. And that's how I got there. So let's back this up and talk about how does everyone start to get these opportunities. You might be like, well, yeah, Carrie, I'm not in a mastermind. What are you talking about? That's ridiculous. But over the years, since I switched into this Carrie version of myself that goes out there and makes amazing things happen and creates a lot of success, since I switched into being her, I have been able to put myself in the most insane rooms. I was invited to Buckingham Palace, and this was before I was making a penny. I was sat at Buckingham Palace round the table with other business owners. One of them had just sold out for something like 800 million. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not making any money. And so there's a huge part of me that felt like a fraud, but another part of me that was like, wow, this is bloody cool that I've just ended up in Buckingham Palace talking about this. I mean, I was there with Prince Andrew, which now doesn't sound so great. I also, talking about Prince Andrew, I won an award, again, before I was making any money. And I won this award, and I ended up, actually before I won the award, I ended up going to this banquet, and the special guest was Prince Andrew. This was years before the scandal. And I ended up sitting right next to Prince Andrew having dinner. And all I kept thinking was, oh my gosh, you have the same teeth as the Queen. Like, his teeth looked very like the Queen's. And I was just really afraid that I was going to cut my food up wrong and just something go flying off my plate and onto his plate. But thankfully that didn't happen. And so when I switched into Carrie, successful Carrie, that version of me, that version of me ended up in rooms with royalty. I ended up in a blooming palace. I ended up on a stage, Tony Robbins stage. I ended up on multiple other stages. I ended up connecting with some of the most successful people around the world. I ended up going to Necker Island and meeting Richard Branson, and I actually sat next to Richard Branson that night and had dinner. I have connected and met amazing people. I have been able to achieve insane things like writing my book and making it a bestseller and getting it published with Hay House, which was my dream. I have actually also a huge dream of mine was to be able to build my own house, and we are in the process of doing that right now, which just feels like that was the big one for me because that was something I dreamed of since I was a kid. So it's like, how do you actually switch? If, for example, you're like old Carrie, who was stuck in her own way and frustrated, and don't get me wrong, I have phases of being like that all the time. I'm not perfect, by the way. But there's a difference between staying stuck frustrated and staying stuck feeling overwhelmed and down and drained and whatever else, and making your way out of it. That's the difference. How do you choose to respond? Like, there's a Viktor Frankle quote. He said, everything in life can be taken away from you except for your freedom to choose how you respond. Like, how you respond is everything. And old Carrie was responding in a really, really bad way. But new Carrie 2.0, successful Carrie, I feel like I should have come up with a name for her before I started this episode, but well. She did things differently. And it was in doing these four very simple things differently that my life began to change, and these ridiculous, insane, unbelievable things began to happen. But the thing is, I remember when I did my TED talk, because again, that was 10x talk, sorry, but that was again on my bucket list, and that has now had like millions and millions and millions of views, which was an amazing experience. I remember there was a guy that was speaking on stage that day too, and he was talking about how he set himself a challenge to basically it was all about facing your fears. So I remember he would do silly activities and then film them, and he went and like lay down in the middle of a busy town centre, which he said was the hardest one he ever had to do, to lie down just outside in a busy place. He said it was really challenging. He would do these really silly things, and when he started to do those things, life started to open up. I was just recently doing Wealth Mastery, a Tony Robbins program, and there was a guy that came to speak at that, and him and his friends did this whole bucket list thing. And in doing that, again, like all these things started to open up. So what is it? I mean, and not only that, sorry, with these people, they ended up going and playing basketball with Barack Obama, which they were repeatedly told no was not possible, and they ended up making it happen. So what is that shift that you have to make to go from feeling like you're just not, things aren't flowing, you're not where you want to be, you feel frustrated, if you feel stuck, to actually making the money you want, creating the impact you want, having the success you want, having the most incredible, amazing experiences that you could possibly think of, and just living an incredible, awesome life where you feel like you're really living it. What is that shift? So there are some really simple things, and I've written 4 down, but actually as I think I'm doing this episode, I think there are a lot more, obviously. But like the biggest thing is that it is simple. It is just about getting started. And so from my perspective, especially if you're building an online business and you feel stuck in your business, one of the things that I want to share in terms of like, how did I get on that stage with Tony Robbins? How did I write that best-selling book? How did I make millions? Like, how did I do those things? When I think about it, it starts with a desire and a vision for me to be able to add value. When I started the Female Entrepreneur Association, I set out with a goal to help as many women as I possibly could and inspire and empower them to build successful businesses. That was my mission. And I did not have anything to sell. In fact, I didn't have anything to sell for the first couple of years. I just wanted to show up and be of service and help. And when you get yourself into a place where you just want to show up and be of service, whatever it is you do, however it is you want to contribute, and maybe you don't even know. And if you don't know, and it's just like, allow yourself to explore the possibilities. Stop overthinking everything. Stop thinking about the thing that's going to make you the most money or whatever, and just start thinking like, how can I just be helpful? Because from that place of how can I show up and be helpful? How can I help others? The doors start to open, the pathway begins to unfold. Like this guy, I think he's called Ben, I shouldn't really remember, but when he did this talk at Wealth Mastery, he was talking about how they did this bucket list thing. But you know, their mission for the bucket list thing was how could they help other people experience things that were on their bucket lists? How could they show up and do these really cool things for other people? How could they be of service to other people? When you show up and you think about how you can help other people, how you can be of service to other people, the world responds. Everything around you will start to respond differently. It is magical. And I found that for myself, like it was one of the most powerful things that shifted me out of this blooming mindset that I was in where I was stuck. And I was making it all about me. But when I stopped making it all about me and made it all about how can I just help other people, it opened the way for me to be able to just show up and do stuff. So like a practical example of what that looked like. How do you actually then show up and help people? What does that look like? So I just started to think about what I wanted to share. So for me, it was trying to find women who had built businesses and try and interview them and get their stories so that I could, share them with other people and inspire other people. And it just really started with the simple idea of just trying to bring women together who are building businesses. And so I started to reach out to people, and I started to interview people, and I started to think about what were some of the things I wanted to say about that topic were, and I started to share some of those things I wanted to say about that topic. I started to connect with universities, with local organizations, with national organizations, with international organizations, and I started to reach out and say, can I help? Can I be of service? I want to do this. I want to be able to help women build businesses. I feel really passionately about this. Is there anything that I could do to support you? Is there anything I could do to serve you? And some of those conversations went absolutely nowhere, and some of them did go somewhere. And I showed up and I started saying yes to a lot of opportunities that I didn't know where they were going to lead to, and some of them were just totally random. But I started saying yes to things because I was showing up to try and be helpful and to try and be valuable. And that really went hand in hand with the second thing, which was I was building relationships with people and connecting, because in order to be able to add value to somebody, you have to build a relationship with somebody. Once you start building relationships with people, you start to build momentum. So often we're stuck because it's just, it's just you, and you're on your own, and you're in your own head. And that voice in your head, that negative committee in your head, can become really overwhelming, and it can become a bit of a slippery slope, a dangerous place to be. But when you stop just being and thinking by yourself and just struggling alone, and you crack yourself out of that and you think, how can I show up and help other people? Who could I help? you start to go and start forming relationships with people, start reaching out to people. And once you start reaching out to people, amazing conversations begin to happen. Don't get me wrong, there will be some crappy conversations too, probably, but amazing conversations will happen. Inspired conversations will happen. Ideas will pop into your head from those conversations. Opportunities will arise from those conversations, and it starts to build momentum. So for me, then again, this is where like the power of, for example, social media comes in, because you can use every social media platform as a tool for connecting and building real relationships with people, which is what I did. And it was, when people would invite me along to things, because I was like trying to connect, and I am very much more on the lines of an introverted person. So this is not a skill, it's not a good skill set of mine. Like I am not, even to this day, I'm not like the best at building relationships with people, but I decided that I could be good when I was showing up to see how could I just help, how could I serve, how could I be useful, that I could show up and do. And I remember really early on somebody inviting me and asking me if I would be a judge on a panel for like a Young Enterprise Award. And I was like, absolutely, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'll get on a train and I'll pay for my train and I'll come down to London and I'll stay in London and I will show up to this thing, and I won't be paid for this thing, but I will give my time because I want to help, I want to be useful, and I want to see, I just want to help. There was no agenda. I had no agenda whatsoever. And I showed up and I met somebody who was the head judge on this panel, and he was an amazing person, and they hosted this festival and they did the award for the festival, and I ended up staying in touch with him, and he nominated me for the award, and the award I won. And it was the event where I was presented the award by Prince Andrew, and I had dinner next to Prince Andrew, and a series of things happened that led to me to being invited to Buckingham Palace. And it's all because one day I said yes, and I showed up to see if I could be helpful with absolutely zero agenda. I had nothing. There was no game plan other than just to be helpful. That was it. I had no idea that me saying yes to that opportunity meant that I was going to end up in Buckingham Palace surrounded by some unbelievably successful business people. I didn't know that was going to happen. I had no clue. You can't foresee the amazing opportunities that are there, right there for the taking, right there for you. But you can only see them once you start to show up and to be valuable and to be helpful and to put yourself out there. So let's talk about this in terms of a practical example. Let's say, for example, that you have a burning desire to help women who struggle with ADHD. So how do you show up and just help as many people? You have this mission, you want to share about it. So you want to start talking about it. You want to find other people that you can help. You want to join groups. You want to connect with people. What events are going on locally? Are there any events going on locally? And if there's not, could you start an event? What organizations are there? Do they do anything in universities for ADHD? What do the local governments do? What does the national government do for you? What do different industry, like different people, different organizations, different, official bodies, like what is going on in that industry? Is it talked about across the media, for example? Are there any specific publications that talk about it? If so, how could you show up and help? How could you say, hey, I'm so passionate about helping women with ADHD. I have experienced it, or whatever the story is behind wanting to do it, and I want to get involved and I want to help. It could be you want to do something to help with, I don't know, parenting or blooming anything in the world. It's just showing up to be helpful. And if you don't know what you want to show up and be helpful about, just show up and do something. I remember I started volunteering at the Prince's Trust, which was a charity that helped support people they gave young people business loans, and I became a mentor for the Business Trust. Like, volunteer, help. I mean, I remember before I even figured that piece out, I volunteered at an animal rescue sanctuary. Like, okay, and that didn't last because I realized picking up poo was just not the most fun thing ever, but it was like a way of shifting into how can I just show up and figure out how I can be helpful in this world. Because if you can figure that out and not overthink it, because this is what we're all doing all the time, we're bloody overthinking everything, and it's just stressful, and we stress ourselves out, and because we're overthinking how we can show up and be helpful, guess what? We procrastinate and we don't do it, so we just stay stuck. But the success you experience, the money you make, is a direct correlation, usually. There's a little asterisk by that, but usually it has a direct correlation with the value that you're putting out into the world, the impact that you're having, what you're giving. It's like the law of reciprocity. That's the way it works. You receive money because you exchange value. So the more valuable you can make yourself, the more helpful you can be, the more chance you've got of being able to become super successful in this life. And when I started to show up and be helpful early on, I wasn't making any money and I was doing everything for free. And I did have a lot of money blocks, I will add to that. Then I realized actually making money was about being of service. It was about adding even more value. And once I connected the dots on that and got myself to a place where I felt confident enough, then I was able to start to make money and allow money to flow to me. Lean into that. Lean into how you can show and be helpful. Okay, that being said, so we've got add value, build relationships, so network, connect, say yes. The next thing is learn, and this links back into how to become valuable, because the more you learn, the more knowledgeable you become, the more valuable you become, which is amazing. So you want to soak up as much information as possible and as many things you're interested in as possible so that you can become the most valuable person ever. You could choose to become a super valuable person. You just have to learn and soak it all up. You could learn, for example, obviously AI is massive. AI is going to change the world. It already is changing the world. So you could be like, you know what? I want to get obsessed and immersed with AI and I want to become super knowledgeable about AI. Do you think that and you might not have any interest, which fair enough if you don't, but do you think if you've got an inkling of interest and you're wondering right now what on earth to do perhaps, if you actually went away and you did a bunch of courses and you went on YouTube and you started playing around with AI tools and you started to see what are the best AI tools, you start playing around with them, you start using them, you start getting really, really good at them, do you think that you could become super valuable to lots and lots of people on this planet? Yes. Absolutely no doubt about it. And do you think if you did that, and then on top of learning, on top of all that learning, you then look at like, how am I going to show up and add value? How am I going to be helpful? How could I put this out into the world? What could I do to just help people? No agenda, just help people. What groups could I be part of? And then on the next thing, like, how can I be building relationships with people? How can I get to know other people who are amazing at AI and are experts in the field of AI? How can I get to know other people where AI would really help them? How could I connect with the people who might want to learn more about AI? How could I help share my knowledge with them and teach them about AI or be of service to them in some way? How could I show up and just be helpful? What could that look like? How could I get involved in any government things about AI or any university things in AI or any local people and companies networking events or anything going on to do with AI? How could I get involved? Do you think if you did that, you would start to see life open up for you and you be able to achieve a lot of success, and start experiencing a lot more opportunities and amazing things arising for you? Do you think that could happen? Yes. The answer is categorically yes, and maybe AI is not for you. But there is something for all of us to get our teeth sunk into and to show up and to do, and it could be multiple things. I mean, geez, it doesn't have to be one thing. It could be somebody might be passionate about 5 different things. Amazing. Show up and be helpful. Show up and do it. You don't have to have it perfectly figured out. You just have to show up. And that leads me to the final thing is take action. When I was stuck in old Carrie mode, I wasn't really taking action. I was doing some things, but I would start and stop and start and stop. And then I was constantly getting in my own way. And I was just never consistently taking the right action. A lot of the time I was just stuck thinking, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do this. And so that thought just kept me playing small and kept me overcomplicating everything and confusing everything. But the moment I decided, you know what? I'm actually going to do this, and how can I be helpful? How can I show up? I started learning, I started joining things. I actually joined a mastermind. I started to really immerse myself in upskilling and getting better and learning what I needed to know. I obviously was taking massive action. I was networking, I was connecting, and then my life began to change. And I started to feel amazing because I was finally being the version of me I wanted to be. I was the version of me that was showing up even though it was scary, and my God, it wasn't perfect, and it still isn't. There were so many moments where I was like, what am I doing? Can I even do this? And I was crying into my journal, and especially I didn't make any money for the first 2 years. I was sometimes I was thinking, really, what on earth am I doing? But I kept going because I knew that if I could show up and just keep adding value, keep being helpful, keep networking, connecting with people, keep learning, keep taking action, I knew doing all 4 of those things could only ever lead me towards creating success in my life. They could only ever lead me towards an amazing breakthrough. They were never going to lead me backwards, ever. So, I mean, unless obviously I've connected with wrong people and made bad decisions on it. So, well, let's not go down that rabbit hole. For the most part, like when we show up and do that stuff and then use our intuition to be sensible about it all, growth and success becomes inevitable. And that's the key thing, because it's so much simpler than we ever think it is. Like creating that success, living the life of your dreams, it's those simple things. If you can start doing those simple things, you'll once you start going with it, it might be hard to kind of really get going with it, but once you get going with it, you can start to see, oh yeah, something's happening here. Something's happening. You can feel the change in the air. It's like the electricity starts and you just feel it. And anyway, so that's how I got on that Tony Robbins stage. It's also how I got on the TEDx stage. I got on the TEDx stage because I was showing up and I was being valuable and I was sharing my message and I was building these relationships with people. It was really not any more complicated than that. It wasn't complicated, fancy funnels, and they have a place and they can be amazing, but it doesn't need to be complicated. It's the simple things that create the big breakthroughs. So I want you to remember that. And I want you to, and even if you're already like, Carrie, I'm already on this pathway, but I have so many moments where I feel like frustrated because I'm not making progress as fast as I want to be, then it's reminding yourself, yes, but if I keep going doing these things, I know that success becomes inevitable. I know that my growth is inevitable. I know when I'm doing these things, it goes hand in hand with my growth. And if you are growing, you're expanding, and it's a positive thing. It's a really positive thing. It's not that it's going to happen overnight and it's going to be like, woo, successful overnight. Like, obviously that doesn't happen for any of us. For me, it took from having this kind of switch into Carrie 2.0, successful Carrie. Like, it took for me, to have that real switch. It took me a couple of years. And I ran out of money, I will say. I ran out of money because I had so many money blocks. That's a conversation for another episode. But when I ran out of money, I felt in despair. And the part of me was like, what am I doing? And the other part was like, I need to figure this out now. And I am ready to figure out my money stuff. And I did. And I got out of my own way. And I kept going. And guess what I did? I kept adding value. I kept connecting with people. And I kept learning. And I kept taking action. And I had the breakthrough. And so it's being able to remember that when times are hard, remember there's a formula that you can go back to. And the formula is really those 4 very, very simple things. And if you can keep doing that, you'll keep progressing and it will be amazing. So I really hope that this has helped you. Remember those 4 little things, keep it simple, and know that if you do those things, that your growth will be inevitable, your success will be inevitable, and that you can really make magic happen. It is possible for every single one of us. And I would love to hear your stories, if you have been doing this, of the crazy situations that you have been in. Like, what crazy invites did you get to what places through just showing up and doing this and building relationships and connecting? What amazing, crazy, incredible situations have you found yourself in? So tag me on Instagram at I am Carrie Green, or send me a message. I would love to hear, love to hear all about it. Also, before I go, if you enjoy listening to the She Means Business show, it would mean so much to me if you could spare a moment to leave me a review over on Apple Podcasts or any of the places you can leave reviews for this, because it really helps me get the podcast in front of new people, and I would love to do that. So if you can spare a moment to leave me a review, I would really, really appreciate it so much. But yes, I hope you enjoyed this. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time on the She Means Business show.